yo no sabía qué tipo de persona era, no lo sabía.
¿Cómo estaban ya muertos cuando
Ya estaban.
los despedazaron?
¿Cómo hacías el trabajo?
Yo les echaba un tambo y con ácido y ahí se entregaban.
This is Santiago Lopez, and from an outsider looking in, he seemed like an ordinary person, a family man who worked hard for his family. But as everyone would later discover, he was, in fact, a cold-blooded monster, responsible for making gruesome stews out of human bodies. But how did he get into this horrid business? Hi guys, welcome to Cartel City. Today, we'll look into the shocking case of Santiago Lopez, the Mexican narco killer who turns enemies into human stew. Originally from Sinaloa, Mexico, Santiago Mesa Lopez started working from a young age as a bricklayer to provide for his family of 9 children. However, the money he earned from that job was not enough. So in the mid-90s, he moved to Tijuana in search of better living conditions. While there, Santiago met Teodoro Garcia Cimental, aka El Teo, who according to some reports is one of the most ruthless and bloodthirsty hitmen in Mexico. El Teo was, by then, working as a lieutenant for the infamous Tijuana cartel, led by the Arellano Felix brothers, Benjamin and Ramon. Santiago claimed that he joined the Tijuana cartel because he wanted to get revenge on some members of a local crime syndicate who had apparently violated his sister. He was first hired as a farm and construction worker at a ranch called La Guerrera, which was one of many owned by the Arellano Felix brothers. However, his hard work and loyalty soon saw him promoted to office keeper, supervising all the Tijuana cartel narcotics deposits in the area. This position was extremely dangerous, but Santiago somehow managed to do it without his body ending up in the sewers. Around this time, the rivalry between Tijuana and Sinaloa cartel was at an all-time high, with thousands of people getting killed and their mutilated bodies popping up everywhere in the city. This level of violence kept the Mexican army on high alert and attracted the attention of U.S. law enforcement. Because of this, the cartels had to look at new and creative ways of disposing of their enemies efficiently without bringing the authorities to their doorsteps. In 1996, the Arellano Felix brothers came up with the perfect plan, but they needed someone loyal to see it through. Santiago was called in by his bosses one day to come see an experiment. They poured several liters of water into a drum and mixed it with some white powder. They then asked Santiago to throw in a piece of meat and wait. When he stirred the meat 2 hours later, it had completely dissolved. The human stew. 6 months later, he was called in again to conduct another experiment. But this time around, instead of a piece of meat, there was an entire human body. His bosses had also brought in some trainers from Israel who were apparently experienced in the area of dissolving corpses in acid. They filled a barrel with about 200 liters of water and added some caustic soda and a couple of other chemicals, and then asked Santiago to undress the body and throw it in. As they watched, the liquid frothed and turned red. Then they left the corrosive to boil overnight, and when they came back the next morning, all that was left were some teeth, nails, and bone fragments. Santiago would later recount this experience in a police statement, saying, "It left the water thick with foam. We put the barrels in the pickup and took them to throw them away in the canyon. It was still dark when we threw them in. 3 months later, I did it again." The thick foam that remained after the dissolving was what would earn him the nickname El Pozolero, which translates to the soup maker. In Mexico, pozole is a traditional stew that's made of corn, chili, and pork. Santiago would go on to work for the cartel for years, getting paid $600 per week to make the pozole. He would even train several other men in the cartel on how to do it, and go to the extent of constructing a drainage system that would make his work easier. He wrote this in his statement. "It was the devil to move them, the human remains, because they weighed a lot. After everything was cleaned up, we stored the barrels. We also washed the drain with hot water because the remains stuck to the pipes." Santiago claimed that all the bodies he dissolved were already dead when he got them, and that his only job was to dispose of them. He went on to give a chilling process on how he got the bodies. "The way they gave me the corpses was as follows. El Teo would call me and tell me that at a certain hour and in a certain place, I was to be given the merchandise. He would call me and tell me that they didn't know in which the corpses were being transported. Then they would call me and tell me in which car they were. They would make a light signal and the delivery was made. He took the job like it was any other and reportedly even told a family member that I prefer my job to you dying over hunger. Over the years, Santiago worked in several different locations around Mexico, and according to him, the military would show up in these locations but would not find anything. When one of the Arellano Felix brothers was arrested in October 2008, former hitman El Teo wanted to take over. This led to violent disputes among the higher-ranking leaders, so El Teo ended up leaving and creating his own criminal group, constantly allying himself with the Sinaloa cartel. This led to the rise of violence in Tijuana that saw the death of over 3,000 people and the disappearance of another 900. Santiago also left the Tijuana cartel alongside El Teo and started working for the Sinaloa cartel and providing much of the same services that he did for the Arellano Felix brothers. But it would not be long before he's arrested and the full extent of his evil is unveiled. You don't know who you're messing with. On January 22, 2009, the Mexican army raided a house in the Baja Seasons neighborhood of Tijuana, where Santiago, El Teo, and other cartel members had reportedly been partying for days. El Teo and 30 of his men managed to escape before they were captured, but Santiago was reportedly so intoxicated that he didn't know what was going on. He was busy in the kitchen, preparing seafood when the soldiers grabbed him from behind, and he reportedly told them, "You have no idea who you're messing with. I'm El Pozolero de El Teo." At the time of his arrest, his name was actually number 20 in the FBI's 20 most wanted list. And as he was being paraded outside in front of reporters and the public, he broke down in tears and began asking for forgiveness while confessing to everything he had done.
Yo no sabía qué tipo de persona era.
¿Cómo estaban ya muertos? ¿Cómo
Ya estaban.
los despedazaron?
¿Cómo hacía ese trabajo?
Yo les echaba un tambo y con ácido y ahí se entregaban.
¿Quién te proporcionaba este tipo de cosas?
Yo la compraba.
¿Dónde lo comprabas?
En cualquier parte.
He told the police and the reporters everything, including how he was introduced to the crime world by El Teo and how he started dissolving bodies. He confessed that he had dissolved about 300 bodies since he started, and that his busiest period was in December 2007, when he reportedly dissolved 32 bodies.
¿No fueron 300 solamente el año pasado?
Una vez que se deshacían, ¿qué hacías con el líquido o lo que quedaba?
Le echaban una cosa.
¿En dónde?
Una cosa.
¿Dónde están las cosas?
Ahí está.
While Santiago claimed that he didn't know who his victims were, police believed that most were El Teo rivals or people who owed him something. As he was being escorted away by soldiers, Santiago was reportedly heard praying out loud and begging God for forgiveness. However, he still didn't feel like what he did was wrong, because according to him, he wasn't a killer or a narcotics dealer or a kidnapper, and was just doing what he had to do to provide for his family. His victims' families, of course, did not buy this, saying that he was just as evil as the rest. Anti-crime activist Fernando Flores, who spoke on behalf of the families, revealed that Santiago had refused to cooperate with the authorities about where he had buried what was left of his victims. He's an evil being, even though Santiago didn't kill their relatives. They believe that only someone mentally disturbed would desecrate a corpse like that. Eventually, Santiago did lead law enforcement agencies to the different burial grounds, but they were not prepared for the horror they were about to uncover. A grisly boneyard. In 2011, narco graves were uncovered in the La Gallera property, where they found 14,000 bone fragments mixed with stones and rocks. They also found what is estimated to be 4,300 gallons of organic matter that included human skin and fat. But that was just the beginning. In 2012, excavation began in another property, the Chicken Coop, located in the Mexican state of Baja, California. It is the same place that Santiago had admitted to building a drainage system that would make his macabre job easier. He had worked there for like a year and a half before it was raided by the Mexican army, although they didn't find anything, probably because they didn't know what to look for. By August 2017, workers had found about 7,000 human bone fragments and 2,000 teeth, as well as 3,600 gallons of organic matter. These findings confirmed the fear that everyone already had. Santiago's body count was much higher than he had claimed. In fact, authorities estimate the numbers to be as high as 650. Unfortunately, the damage that the acid had done on the bodies made it impossible to know the exact number or even get their DNA. Relatives of people who had mysteriously disappeared in the area brought pictures of their loved ones to Santiago to see if he could recognize them as some of his victims. But Santiago said he didn't see his victims' faces, as their heads were always wrapped in gray parcel tape. Now, get this. Despite having confessed to such heinous and horrific crimes, and the fact that human remains keep popping up in the areas where he worked, Santiago was only sentenced to 10 years in prison for charges related to organized crimes. And the only charge against him is his presumed possession of illegal firearms. How completely outrageous is that? But it gets worse. He actually completed his sentence in 2022 and could be released any day now, which is really scary to think about. But what do you think? Let me know in the comment section, and be sure to like and subscribe to Cartel City.